All right, who's going to go first? Do you want to go first this time?
Yeah, sure.
Sure.
I don't think this one's going to be that exciting, though. But give it a go.
All right.
Buyer's Remorse.
Welcome to Buyer's Remorse. I'm Darren.
I'm Justin.
And in this show, we're giving each other ideas of games to play that are already in our libraries that have been kind of overlooked or maybe purchased by mistake while we've bought other bundles for better games, and then these ones get kicked to the sides. And then we fish them out for each other and say, hey, why don't you play this little gem? Justin, you played one of my only favourite Telltale game.
Alright, so first off, most of the time with Buyer's Remorse, we don't really worry about spoilers. We only play for 60 minutes. So, for the most part, it's either a game that we don't really have to worry about spoiling, or it's not really worth it. This one, however, I would say, I played Wolf Among Us, and the story is quite important for this one. So I would say, if you don't want spoilers for Wolf Among Us, this is one I would say, story-wise, at least as far as I know, I think it's worth playing. If you're worried about the story being spoiled, maybe go and come back and listen to this after you play.
Play the first episode, at least, basically. Did you get through the first episode?
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't think I did, actually.
I think they're about an hour each, so you probably got close to the end or past the first episode at least.
Yeah, but not quite to the... Yeah, so that's the thing with Telltale Games. They tend to be all chapters.
Five
chapters. And they're told kind of in a serial format where at the end you get a next time on, and then when you start up the next chapter, it's previously on. So you get an idea. I do like that a lot. But yeah, this episode is pretty much just going to be the first chapter. I didn't quite finish, I don't think, with the first chapter in the first hour. But I think that's also because I was looking around a lot and trying kind of everything. Yeah, but that's the thing. If you like Telltale Games, I would definitely say play this one. If you like Telltale Games, like The Walking Dead or
Tales from the Borderlands.
Yeah, there are a lot of reasons to play this game. I would definitely recommend it based on the story alone. I think that it's interesting enough. It is based on the Fables comics from Vertigo, which I've only read like the first 2 or 3 trades, but I love them.
Yeah,
and so this really holds true with who those characters are, and they look great, and it's kind of what I would hope that it would be. So for that, I think that it's great. The game is a bit older. It comes from October of 2013, but on Steam, it still has a very positive recent with like 59 reviews and overwhelmingly like overall. And that was like 17,000 reviews, like, or 1,700. I don't know, like a ridiculous number of reviews. People love this game. So I would say it's probably worth playing. I do have some problems with it, but that'll be in the spoiler section. So, if you don't want spoilers, we'll talk to you later.
Yep. See you in an hour.
Alright, spoil section. So, you played this. Why did you choose this? Because you've already played this game.
Yeah, I chose it for you because I know that you don't like the Telltale Games that much, and I felt that this one maybe suited you and was better, and that you would actually enjoy this one, because I played this way back in, like you said, 2013, and I bought this because I didn't have a computer at the time. My computer had broken. I had a tab, and I bought this to play on my tab.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And
I wonder how that would work. I wonder if that would be better.
it was good because you got to swipe the screen, all the QTEs that are in there. There's a lot of QTEs in this game.
There are a lot, and they're also very awkward.
Yeah, some of them would be, I think.
That's one of the problems I have, is that I'm not a big fan of the Walking Dead games, but the QuickTime events on that were... And I was not a fan of the QuickTime events on that one, but I am definitely not a fan of the QuickTime events in this one.
Yeah, they went
They're
hard
really
with this.
awkward.
Yeah, because it was their first one, basically, and it's very similar to some of the old God of War kind of QuickTime events. They're just... Some of them are really ridiculous.
But I think QuickTime events on a controller work better than on a keyboard and mouse, and that's what I'm stuck with.
Oh, is there no controller support for it?
Not that I can see.
Right. But But yeah, so I like this game. It affected me a lot because, again, like you, I've read some of the comics. I like the comics. And so I wanted to give this game a shot, and it blew me away because it was something different, because it was Telltale's first shot at this, as far as I'm aware. Something of this magnitude anyway, and they pulled it off really well. They put their heart and soul into it, and you can tell that from looking at their later games, I think. And that's why I've kind of fallen out of love with them. So yeah, I wanted you to play this because you started with maybe Walking Dead.
Yes.
And then went on from there, and it went just drastically downhill after season 1 for you. And I've always been saying to you, Justin, you should play the Wolf Among Us, and you've kind of been like, yeah, but it's Telltale. So I wanted you to see. So,
all right, so
take
first
us
off,
through it.
in our other podcast, in Filling in the Gaps, we are planning to do a much longer episode dealing with Walking Dead.
Telltale in general, I think, yeah?
Or possibly, yeah. So I don't want to spend too much time discussing, like, the Telltale formula or whatever, but that is a huge issue with me. This is not my type of game. I see this more as being a visual novel than actual a game. Yes, there are choices. Do the choices matter? Of that, sometimes I'm not really sure. I think that it looks great. It looks very much like the comic come to life. It's not the best animation, but for a game, it's pretty good. And quite frankly, if I could get a Wolf Among Us that looked this good, even in animation, because they've done such a good job, I feel, with the voice acting, with the way the characters look, I would overlook the fact that it's not the top quality animation because it has that look. I think
it's got character.
I think to get better animation, it's very unlikely we would get art this detailed. And so again, I would deal with lesser animation to get this detailed art that looks like the comics come to life. And I think that it would be great to have. And that's the thing. I think Telltale, personally, forget games and just get into making chaptered, animated stuff like this. And I would be quite happy with it. I think that I would be all for it. Because when it comes to a game, even some really good games, some really good looking games like Heavy Rain, I like the game, but I like it more for its story. I don't really like it so much for the game. It doesn't feel as much like a game. Quick time events in a boss fight with God of War do feel like part of a game. This one, one of the biggest problems I have with Telltale Games, and this one in particular, is the story goes on for ages. You have 15 minutes of just talking dialogue, which is great. But then when a QuickTime event suddenly happens out of nowhere, oh, I'm having a drink because I didn't know, or, you know, I'm throwing something away, or my hands are just not on the controls because I've been lulled into the sense of story. Oh, right, I'm still playing a game. Like, I don't know how many times I had that thought. Oh, right, I'm still playing a game. And then I have to jump in there. And a lot of times, especially in this one, the amount of time they give you is way too short.
They do that bad. Yeah, they've definitely ironed out the kinks in that for later games.
Yeah, like we talked before, you played Michonne recently, right? And you thought that it was much better as far as QuickTime events.
The length of time for choices seems to be quite regular. In Wolf Among Us, it's like, boom, oh, you missed it? Sorry.
Yeah. You have not even enough time to read your 3 choices before choosing something.
Yeah, that's true.
All right, so let's get into the game. So I start the chapter. Well, actually, that's the thing. So there's a kind of prologue chapter before the opening credits where it explains to you the basic situation, right? You're a group of people that have escaped from the kind of, I forget what they call it, like not Homeworld, because that's Steven Universe that I've been watching, but essentially the same thing. Like, well, they've left their world to live in ours, and most of them have fallen on hard times. So it's not a great life for them, but they keep referencing this better than where they came from, which is something they keep doing in the comics, but I've not gotten to the point where I actually find out what that's really about. At least not that I remember. I haven't read them in like a decade, I think. Not that I don't want to. I just don't currently have access to them like I used to. Like I said, it looks great. Even in the opening chapter kind of headings, the images are there and they move slightly. So there's this kind of slight animation and it just looks really good. The music sounds fantastic.
Yeah, the music is good, yeah.
Like everything there really works well. But then it says, this game is a series of choices and the story will adapt to your choices. It essentially says that, which you and I both know may be true or may not be true. We're not sure. That's something for another day. But that is an issue for some of my frustrations. Yeah, so we're introduced to Bigby Wolf, who is the sheriff of Fabletown, as it's called. And we start off by talking to Toad, where we're told silence is an option, which essentially means they choose for you, or they choose what happens if you choose silence. And silence, from what I understand of playing The Walking Dead, and also just from the bit I've played so far with this one, seems like silence is usually a bad choice, because you know if you made an interesting choice, let's put it that way. You know you made an interesting choice because it will tell you. Snow White will remember that. Toad will remember that. And so if you say something that doesn't sound very nice, and Toad will remember that, that means you probably have messed up.
Yeah.
And that's really frustrating to be told that. Thanks, Telltale.
You're a bad person.
Yeah. Oh, well, that gets worse at the end of the chapter, but I think let me talk about that now. So when you hit the end of a chapter, which I don't think I did in this playthrough, but I have played a bit beyond, I forgot about this.
The stats.
Yeah, the stats. Oh, 90% of the people did that.
You didn't, asshole.
That's essentially what it feels like.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, they showed this person mercy. You didn't. And it's like, oh, well.
Yeah, why not word it the other way around? Like 10% of people were badass enough not to do that, like you did. 90% of people are pussies.
Yeah. I mean, they basically just say how many did the same thing as you.
Yeah.
But it does make me think that must influence you for later chapters. Because if you did mean stuff the first time and only 20% of people did that, then wouldn't that start to make you go, oh, well, maybe I should be doing what everybody else is doing? Or, I mean, maybe there's a chance that people will go against the grain. They'll go, oh, I want to do whatever is the least likely choice. But I feel like some of these choices, it's almost like you don't want to make the hard choice. You want to go with what you think the game wants you to do.
I never thought about it like that before. I usually do what I want to do. Like, I never really think about what's the winning conditions for the game. Because I don't think, well, maybe...
I don't think there is a winning condition.
There's not a winning condition.
Game, really.
So, yeah, I always do what I feel is right. And then I get to the end of the chapter and I'm like, oh, nobody else did that. Like, I plucked his eyeballs out. Like, I was the only person that did that. Oh, why? He was a horrible person. He deserved it. Evidently, I'm just a cruel person.
There are... not really. I don't know. I guess I felt like the game kept trying to get me to make the nice option instead of the mean option, even though I think the mean option would have been more fun. So I think maybe that's part of why I get a bit frustrated, is I feel like I have to make the nice choice rather than the fun choice.
No, play it fun. Do what you want to do. It's not. I honestly, I don't think it's not gonna affect the game. You're not gonna get to the end and say, oh, you made all the wrong choices. Sorry, you got to go back and do it all again.
But it does make the game more difficult, because if I annoy a character early on, they may not help me later on.
Yeah.
So that does play into things. So we start off in a kind of tenement building in the South Bronx. It's after midnight. We talk to Toad, and here's one thing where I'm a bit confused, because occasionally there are people in this town where I'm kind of going, I'm not sure they really belong in Fabletown. We have characters from Alice in Wonderland. We have characters here. Mr. Toad is Mr. Toad from Wind in the Willows.
Yeah.
So I'm like, is that a fable?
Yeah, because then you'd be expecting like Winnie the Pooh and stuff to show up as well. Yeah.
So,
although I would love to see crack smoking Winnie the Pooh.
I definitely don't. You enjoy your fan fiction. Yeah. We meet the huntsman who is drunk, and we have to deal with him. And there's a woman in there with him, and they're having a spat. And basically, I kind of feel, before we get to him, we're finally given a choice to actually do something ourselves. So we're there in the hallway. We can hang up a payphone, and we can pick up a matchbook, and we can open the door, essentially. So I think I knocked on the door first, and then I walked in, and then we have to deal with the huntsman, with this woman, and basically this is where you get your first chance to do timed responses and how quick it was. And then the quick time fighting, which was crazy. It was so difficult, because in this one, it's not just a matter of hitting a button. I have to move the mouse cursor over to a circle over the area. So if I want to hit him in the face, I have to move it to the circle that's over his face and then click the button. And your cursor may be way across the screen, so you don't have enough time to get there. You have limited choices as to what to do. And I don't know, I felt like there was zero option as to whether or not I was going to fight the woodsman. I would have liked to have avoided that fight, but I feel like pretty much I have to.
Yeah,
right?
You have to.
And this is part of the Telltale problem of choices, where I feel like if I was given real choices, then I could avoid that situation. But there are certain story points that I have to get to. And one of them is flying out the window and landing on Toad's car. But here is where we're introduced really to the interesting thing of the Fable world, where it's very, very tough to kill a Fable. Bigby is hurt, and the woodsman comes after him. The woman he was fighting with puts an axe in his head, and he's still just grumbling about kind of it hurting.
Yeah, ow. That stings.
But he's fairly fine, even with an axe in his head. We then get to talk to the woman. We see the ribbon around her neck. Is that important? We don't know until later. And I think it's at this point in my notes where I say, yeah, there's so much story to get into this game. It's really tough with the quick time events. And is this really a game, right? So again, I think I would more say virtual novel as opposed to game. But the story in this one, it's already very intriguing because they've done such a faithful job of sticking to the world of Fables. But I think even like The Walking Dead, I would say that they shoved a few things in there I kind of disagree with. But that is one thing I think Telltale does very well, is stick to the source material, make it feel like it belongs with the source material. We get our opening credits as though it's a movie.
Yeah, it's like a noir, isn't it, basically? Yeah.
And episode 1 is called Faith, which we'll find out is the name of the woman. Unfortunately, we're going to soon find her head on the stairs of the Woodland tenement, or luxury apartments they call it, but they're not that luxury. Beauty comes out of hiding, and here's an important story point where we have to make a choice. Do we promise not to tell Beast that she's sneaking out, or do we say, no way, we're going to tell? And then of course we see Beast about a minute later, and we have to say whether or not we tell him the truth about Beauty or not. I don't think they would make much difference, but I could be wrong because I haven't played it through twice. And I think that's another thing. I'm not the type of person to really want to play through something twice. This would be a really long game to play twice. I looked it up, and it seems like the average runtime, the average playtime is about 9 hours.
I'd say it's, I don't remember exactly, but I do remember it's longer than the kind of current Telltale games that are about an hour an episode now. But I remember my playthrough was between like 7 or 8 hours. Yeah.
You can redo chapters, but I think you're redoing those chapters based on your previous chapters. It's just a bit much for me to want to go and try all the branches to see what difference
that would be that'd be an absolute nightmare. And especially you would have to write down, I would, because I've got a terrible memory. I'd have to write down every choice that I made. Like, at this part, I said yes. Okay, I'm going to say no next time for that. And that just doesn't sound like a lot of fun to do that way. I would play Wolf Among Us again, because it's been such a long time since I played it, and I'd love to see the story again, because I kind of remember parts of it, but not all of it. And it does get really interesting. Like, you've just done the first chapter. They definitely build on it. And like you said, when I bought this game, I wasn't looking at it as a game at all. It was an Ian Jackson. Is that?
Oh, what?
Sorry. It was a Steve Jackson choose your own adventure game, basically, novel. That's what it was to me. It wasn't really a game. It was just like you said, it was interactive fiction, basically.
Right, and for that, I think it works well, but I don't think that you still get the varied choices that you would get in a choose your own adventure.
What do you mean?
In a choose your own adventure, you could die.
You can die in this, yeah.
Yeah, but then the game starts over.
Yeah.
But I'm dying because I didn't hit the Q button fast enough.
Well, yeah, that's...
I mean, maybe there are choices later in the game where I make a wrong choice and that immediately leads to my death, but I'm not seeing that. I'm seeing that I need to get to these story points that they've got. It's kind of like in the Doctor Who universe where there are fixed points in time and those can't be altered. That very much feels like the way this game works, where there are certain things that I'm going to have to encounter regardless of the choices that I make.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. I think that's how the game works pretty much.
So that's why I would say it's not quite the same as a choose your own adventure book, because in those sometimes you could just die. You could do totally different endings and end up with totally different scenarios with how things work. Whereas this one is always pushing you into the next thing you need to do. It's still a very linear story, with slight alteration.
Yeah. Did you ever play the Tin Man games? You ever heard of this? Tin Man Choose Your Own Adventures? They're like a resurgence of like the old Steve Jackson, Ian Livingstone novels. They're really good. We should look into maybe talking about those in the future, because those are quite fun. I don't think they're on Steam, though. I think you can only buy them through like the App Store or the Google Play Store. They're on mobile. But yeah, there's a bunch of different ones. And yeah, there's sections of that you can just bypass entire sections of the story and still get to the end, which I like, because that is replay value. It's like, oh, I wonder what would happen if I turn right then in that cave. Then it's like, that takes you to the Necromancer's lair and blah, 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 and you get this item. So yeah, it's like Telltale's flowchart isn't as wide. It's always kind of letting you do some stuff, but always like reeling you in.
Yeah. So I don't know how in depth we want to get into the story, but basically, once Faith's head is on the stairs, that's where things start to really get interesting. This is where you can actually walk around and finally, I feel like, actually do something game-wise. So I go through and look for clues, and whether or not I pick up on the clues and tell Snow White the right thing, that leads to whether or not, I don't know, she's happy with me doing my job. And then we get to meet Ichabod Crane, who's temporarily in charge of Fabletown while King Cole, now Mayor Cole, is out of town on business or something. I don't know. We also then get to explore a bit Crane's office, which is pretty cool because there's the mirror on the wall where you can...
the magic mirror, yeah.
You can use the magic mirror to kind of spy on people, and that can give you clues. You go into the books and you find out a bit more about the fables and where they were and where they are now. And
oh, that's where the flying monkeys are as well, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that whole bit I really liked. That felt like a game, but then immediately kind of back in the story. So that's part of my problem, I think, is just this kind of, the juxtaposition of the two doesn't work very well. I'm either playing a game or I'm watching a show, but they don't seem to flow seamlessly together, and they're way too far apart. I would almost rather just not play a game, not have a quick time event, and just have it be a visual novel. I'm not even sure I need the choices.
Just to have a show.
Yeah. I mean, that's basically, to me, what it feels like. We are given the choice, then we have to decide if we're going to find Faith's husband, who is sitting in a chair with a bloody knife. He looks in bad shape from what we saw in the mirror. Or, of course, as we're about to walk out the door, Toad calls and says, oh, I've got a problem. Come down immediately. My choice was to go see the bleeding guy because I thought maybe I could save him first. And so I did get to talk to him a little bit. But of course, his responses are very vague because it's a mystery and it must remain a mystery. And then after that, we encounter Tweedledee and get attacked by Tweedledum. And so that leads us to not really getting all the answers that we want, and that's really where the hour ends. Now, I did finish the first chapter. In fact, I finished the first couple chapters now.
Okay.
Yeah. So overall, I said, it's more story than game. It feels better than The Walking Dead, but some choices still don't work. I still feel like I'm not really being given choices, because if I go to see Toad first, then I might be able to help him, but I won't be able to help out the other guy. I'm constantly being given choices that there's no really good answer. There's no right answer.
I think I went to Toad, so I can confirm that choice does make a difference, because when you get to the apartment, the guy's dead, and you can't question him.
Yeah.
So, but you get something else from Toad instead. And it's like, they can't do everything. They can't have infinite number of choices and infinite number of dialogues and stuff. It's like a movie. It is a movie, basically. It's a show that you can interact with. And it's like, yeah, I get, like, what we'll talk about later when we talk about the rest of the series. There's huge problems there, but for this, it worked well for me because, yeah, it was more show than game for me. And it's like, there's only a finite number of ways, and they're pushing you towards the end of the story, basically.
But this is where I wonder what you would think about it playing again.
I'll probably have to play it again now.
Having played through some of the other Telltale games, would you still go back to this one and love it as much? I think probably the story for this one, at least what I've seen so far, is probably enough to make it interesting.
The characters, too. The characters are great.
And the voice acting is really, really good in this one. I just don't enjoy this as a game. And I think it's just not my style of game. It's a point where I just have to say, yeah, these are just not for me. This is probably, I think, in your opinion, so far, the best one you've played, right?
It's the best one. It probably will always be the best one, as far as I'm concerned.
So I just kind of think it's not for me. Would I recommend it to people? If they like visual novels, yeah, probably. If they like other games from the same developers, then yeah, definitely.
Do you think it's the best one?
I don't know. I've only played Walking Dead Season 1 and Season 2.
Is it the best one of those three?
Easily.
Well, that's all I wanted to hear, really. I just wanted to kind of know that I was kind of on point about that it was good. And that even now that you have this distaste for them, you can still appreciate The Wolf Among Us as being the cream of the Telltale crop.
I almost wonder if I'd prefer to watch this, say, on Twitch or somebody doing a playthrough on YouTube than actually playing it. It is good. It is definitely quality, but it's just not my style of game. Yeah. So, I don't know. I mean, this is definitely one that I got cheap. This is definitely one that had been sitting in my library for a long time. I'm glad I have it. I'll be glad to have gone through it. There are just moments that it's going to irritate me. But I think far less so far than either of the Walking Dead game. I will say one thing that I think is an improvement for this story as opposed to The Walking Dead is The Walking Dead always felt very, very limited as to what I could do and what I could explore. This game, it makes a bit more sense because it's a much smaller story. It's not the whole world. I need to go to Toad's apartment building because that's where the issue is, and it's just within that building. I need to go see Lawrence's apartment because that's where Lawrence is. I need to go to, in chapter 2, I need to go to a bar because that's where the woodsman hangs out. All the locations seem small, but it works in this game because it always fits the story. The Walking Dead, there were a number of times where I was outside looking for stuff, but I could only do it within kind of one block, which made no sense. That is the whole world. Why can I only sit in this one block and look? And so that's definitely one thing where I think Wolf Among Us works very well, is the story is much more designed to fit the limitations of this storytelling and this type of game.
Fair enough, yeah. But no, I agree with what you said before. Like, if Telltale would just make a show out of this, because they've obviously acquired the rights to it, why not just go ahead and make an animated series of it? Because it would kill. I mean, like we talked about before, I can't remember which channel it was. One of the networks had a choice, and they were like, okay, we're going to make Fables or we're going to make Grimm. And they went with Grimm, not with Fables, which maybe is a good thing because maybe it would have been terrible if they'd cut out all the kind of more R-rated stuff.
Let me say, have you watched Grimm?
I've watched some of it.
I'm not a big fan, so I am very glad that they didn't try to make Fables. Fables is much bigger, would have a much bigger cast, and should actually be a bit darker.
Yeah, exactly.
Than the way that at least Grimm did in, say, season 1.
Right. But Telltale, man, yeah. Pick it up and make an animated series. You'll never have to erase that. I don't know what I'm talking about.
So, tags. For tags, I would say visual novel, QuickTime events, and beautifully animated. I don't say beautifully animated because the animation is the best ever, but I think that the visual style works really, really well. I think that it looks very much like the comics looked. So I am very impressed with how this looks. And like I said before, I would happily have a kind of less quality animation to get a better quality art style like what they've done here. And Fables tends to work this way. Like, it's not super action heavy. You don't have to have lots of crazy explosions or fights in space or, the thing is, lately I've been watching Steven Universe, and part of why they can do what they do, I think, is how simple the characters look, which allows them to do more interesting things with the action and fight scenes. With Fables, you don't really need to do that too much. So I feel like it could work. I think this could be a good fit for something that's a bit more adult-style animation, but not have to worry about too much action.
Yeah.
So that's it. I think because I got it on the cheap and because I do like the story, no remorse here, I would say.
Good stuff.
Buyer's confirmation.
Thanks for listening, everyone. If you like the short podcast and you want to listen to a longer one, we have another podcast called Filling in the Gaps, where we take a look at puzzle games or puzzling movies, kind of mind benders, and try and take them apart and put them back together again. So you can find us over there. We also have a Steam group where we give away games and we do puzzles over there too to win those games.
Or you can get a hold of us if you have questions or suggestions at buyersremorsepodcast@gmail.com.
No apostrophe.